Good morning. How many of you from the banking industry here? A minority. How many of you from FinTechs? How many of you from the vendor side? You are supplying or selling something to banks. Okay, so reasonable amount. The reason I asked is that over the course of the next 15 minutes, I realize it's a mixed audience, but hopefully between the three communities that you have here, each of you will take away something from my presentation. Final question. How many of you have heard of Finacle? Okay, small number. We are in the banking software business, and for those of you who go to Gartner's website and have a look at their Magic Quadrant, we are up there at the top right-hand corner as a leader in core banking systems. But that's really where we started our work, and today, obviously, as the world of digital and technology has evolved, our business has evolved as well. And what I'm here to talk to you about is what we see as a perspective in the changing world, and what is it that banks are required to do as they respond to some of the changes in the market. Now, in the previous presentation, you heard about customer centricity, you heard about the confluence between banks and fintechs. You'll probably hear a little more about that in my session as well, simply because those are real issues today. I think when you look at the way the banking world has changed, possibly the most fundamental change that's happened in the last 2-3 years is the fact that the biggest competition for banks has actually come from non-banks. Right? And when you look across the world, you'll find different examples of non-banks having come and really disrupted the way that they're going to do the business. What we are seeing is, I think, 4 different models as far as digital transformation is concerned. And the diagram here shows you different connotations of what we're talking about. If we start from the bottom left-hand, FinTech disruptors. I mean, a lot of you from the FinTech community. Paytm is a payments institution in India. It was a granted license by the regulator to come and disrupt the payments business. Over the course of the last 18 months, it's acquired 160 million customers. Their mandate in the next 2 years is to acquire 350 million customers, with just 3,000 touch points across the country. Now, they're leveraging technology. They're taking a proposition to the market in the midst of a limited number of products, but really differentiating through customer experience. The other example, top right-hand corner, is what increasingly in the banking industry is being recognized as a bank in a bank. And what that means is that large institutions today, large banking institutions, find that they're going to have a challenge with their old legacy technology, and therefore they're going to look at ways in creating a new proposition without necessarily touching the old legacy systems. And therefore what they create is a new bank in a bank by leveraging new technology and bringing a new proposition to the market and taking that in a more innovative and a flexible manner. Top left-hand corner, ICICI Bank and comprehensive digitization. An example of a bank that very early on recognized that unless you invested in the right kind of technology infrastructure, a lot of the surround innovation that you typically want to do is not going to be possible. Too many instances today when you look at institutions, you'll find that banks either deal with the front-end systems and forget that there's a complexity at the back end, or they spend years trying to address the back end and forget that the customer experience, people like you and me, we don't care what's there at the back end. Our experience is with the front end. Right? And I think there are institutions who are recognizing that there's a convergence between these two, and really that's what brings the whole concept of digitization and the whole concept of a superior customer experience to the table. Clearly, the customer is the king, and I guess during the course of the day today, you're going to hear this message in different ways from different speakers. You heard that in the previous presentation as well. You're going to hear that, I'm sure, in subsequent presentations. But in the banking industry, and I think it's fair to say that the banking industry has lagged behind compared to some of the other industries. In the banking industry today, surely what's happening is that the customer is taking control with the proliferation of technology, with the changing demographics that we're finding in banking customers, and with the fact that the power of technology is available in your pocket today through the mobile phone, right? And I think that completely is redefining the way banking is going to get done. Let me just give you 3 examples. I don't know whether you recognize any of these numbers. 2.9 trillion. That's the value of payments that Alibaba's Alipay and Tencent's WeChat did through the payment network in China. Which means they took away that kind of business which typically would have been done through the banks. 50% of GDP. Can you imagine 50% of the GDP of a single country gets done through one payment mechanism? In Kenya and East Africa, M-Pesa is a wonderful example of a non-banking entity coming in and leveraging mobile technology to do what banks had never done before. 50% of the GDP of that country goes through M-Pesa. It's not a bank. 75% of contactless payments. In the US today, 75% of all payments goes through Apple Pay. Again, not a bank. 3 examples in 3 different parts of the world, in 3 different ways that they are making it available, all through technology. And who's feeling the pain? The banks. Who's benefiting? You and me as customers. This is the change that we're living in today, and this is the change we need to recognize. The speaker from IBM earlier this morning, Nitin, spoke about blockchain. Certainly, we see a lot of hope in blockchain. We've got a blockchain offering where we've done a variety of use cases with banks. Today, banks are looking at a variety of transactions to sort of pilot on blockchain. We've got 11 customers on that. I think the important point to note, like you heard earlier this morning, is that blockchain is a new technology that's here to stay. The cynics will probably give a view saying that it's not yet proven, the business model has not been monetized. The point I think I'm making here is that we live in an environment today where no one is scared of making use of new technology. Cast your mind back to 10 years ago. When something new came, people were wary about it, right? That's not the case right now with new technology. Moment something comes, there are any number of people or any number of institutions willing to embrace it. Blockchain is one such. I think clearly as far as banks are concerned, they're recognizing that for them to survive in the current environment, they need to be clear about their 4 categories of propositions. Right? And what we've got here is obviously examples, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend time explaining all of those, but it's clear that through each of these 4, banks have to try and find ways of differentiating themselves. What we are seeing as we operate across the world is 5 key themes that we recognize and we think banks need to take cognizance of as far as their investments are concerned. First and foremost, I think this whole concept of banking as a platform. I'm sure you've read about the fact that today a lot of research is going on in the United States of the Tesla car. And within the Tesla car, what is the single biggest change that they're looking at? Which is that the dashboard of the car is going to become a platform. The dashboard of a Tesla car is going to become a platform to do anything and everything. Right? So you could do your banking as you're driving through the dashboard. You could be communicating through the dashboard. You could be browsing the net through the dashboard. So the dashboard of a car is becoming the platform for interaction with the external world. The same thing is happening in banking. You've heard, those of you in the banking industry would have heard the concept of open banking. That's clearly what's happening. And the word open is used deliberately. the whole environment is being opened up for others to interact. And that's really what we're seeing, not just in the banking industry, but like I said, even in the automobile industry and many others. Automation is, I think, another example. We went through a phase where institutions were a little cynical and wary about automation. Immediately, I think everyone sort of looked at the possibility of job losses. Of course, there are going to be tasks that are going to be replaced with automation. But if you read the latest McKinsey article that came out, I think, last month, what they say is that automation is actually going to create an opportunity for lifting the morale of employees. Because what's going to happen as the more mundane tasks get automated, it's going to give an opportunity for people like you and me to go and start doing more high-value stuff, which we otherwise may not have done. Right? So there is a downside to automation, but I think like the Chinese saying goes, there's an opportunity in every threat. Right? And that's really what's happening here through automation. Elevating end customer experience. I think you heard about end customer experience in the previous talk. All I would say is that as far as banks are concerned, they're recognizing that virtually every year, some new technology is coming which is going to put more and more power into the hands of people like you and me. And we are going to become that much more demanding of our banks. We are going to be becoming that much more critical of the kind of services they offer. And therefore, banks are forced to take recognition of the fact that if they don't pay attention to customer experience, they're going to lose business. Designing frictionless experience, I think you already, many of us today are already experiencing that, whether it's voice banking, whether it's biometrics, and a variety of other new technologies that are coming out. All of that is making it seamless for customers to be able to interact without actually flipping between the different devices or the differing platforms. Banks, more than possibly any other entity, have access to the kind of data which many others would kill for. The truth also is that banks have not leveraged that in the past. And I think in the banking industry today, we are finding this proposition where there's a lot of focus on the need to leverage data, on the need to leverage cognitive, but the truth is that banks are lagging far behind in that. Right? And I think you're going to see, as more and more progressive banks start differentiating themselves, you're going to find that you start with a platform, you start with the basic platform, and banks are going to be forced to start investing into creating more banking-specific capability in that so as to be able to mine the data, so as to be able to know more about you and me as customers, so as to be able to tell us what we want before we actually want it. Now, the banks are very far away from that, right? But that's the way the world is being forced to move because of the kind of embedded insights that are capable through the power of technology that's available today. I think one of the other big conundrums in the market today is this whole mystery around the word cloud. Right? What does cloud mean? If you go to 10 different banks in 10 different parts of the world and ask them what cloud means to them, you'll probably find different definitions. The truth is that cloud today is no longer about just moving your infrastructure into a more managed service kind of proposition. Right? Banks are realizing that leveraging cloud technology, there's a capability for them to make a business differentiation. We work with banks who are recognizing that cloud today is no longer just a cost proposition, but indeed it's a proposition which will allow them to make a difference in the way the customer experiences the whole services. But more importantly, it allows them a phenomenon whereby banks are recognizing that without necessarily paying too much of attention to some of the pain points that they had in the past around IT, technology, infrastructure, and so on, today they can divert their attention into other areas which actually make a difference towards customer experience. We as a company have invested in Israel here. We acquired a company here, Panaya. We've also got a large local partner here, Taldor. And we believe that as you pay respect to the fact that with the proliferation of cloud, you're going to find that different countries are going to have their own guidelines around data privacy and security. It's important that you make local investments, but bring global scale to be able to make available the kind of cloud technologies as they conform to the local requirements. We are today doing one of the largest back-end transformations in a banking institution in the US. For those of you who've traveled there, Discover is a name that you'll be familiar with. They are more well-known in the credit card business. They've also got a very, very strong consumer banking arm, right? And the statistics here really show you what the power of technology has done in terms of making the transformation that this institution really was looking for. I talked about ICICI Bank earlier. I'm not going to spend time on that. This is a direct bank in Europe. Zuno is a direct bank, no branches. Again, they've leveraged our technology, and they've completely changed the way customer experience has been seen across different countries. This is the kind of scale that we support today in the banking industry. And for those of you who come from the banking industry and who are familiar with our business will recognize this. Some of you who are not from the industry, this is the kind of scale that we have today. I think the more important part there is almost 17% of the adult population, or adult banking population in the world, is banking with some kind of institution that's leveraging our technology. My last slide. What is the biggest challenge today? We all get excited by new technology. The truth is that for a bank, they're not going to be able to leverage new technology without recognizing that there are challenges with existing technology. And therefore, the progressive bank will have to do two things. They'll have to renew their old systems progressively, concurrently, but at the same time, invest in something new. The banks that don't have the ability to have the new and the renew in parallel are the ones that will lose out. The banks that do that smartly and together are the ones that will progress. Thank you very much for your time. We have a booth outside, and I hope we'll be able to see you later in the day. Thank you.